I'd like you to think back on the experience of the year, the people you met, the places you visited, and I'd like to ask you, based on these experiences, what do you think are the biggest challenges to providing access and quality education for all learners? What, if any, conclusions did you each individually or as a group?
Okay, so we've done quite a bit of thinking around this area, and we realized that this whole issue about access and quality is multifaceted, is a multidimensional issue, and it can be tackled in one area. So we decided to come up with a framework and looked at the constraints or the barriers facing access to education.
The highlight of being a learner since last year is to deeply understand the complexity of education. Originally being from the Middle East, the thing that we preach about when anyone asks us what do you want to reform in education, we'll say give us money, and that's it. So being in WISE just changed my perspective that in order to fix or reform complex challenges that faces education, it never can be with a simple thing. It never can be 1 + 2 = 3. It should be customized for the region that we are targeting. It should be customized for the country, the place. We cannot take education as one part without the other. We cannot provide iPods to classes with teachers that are being illy prepared. It just is not working.
We came up with 5 main areas which form the framework. So we identified organizational structural issues that stems from organizations in terms of what the government is doing, whether the CSOs doing, what are individuals doing, what are businesses doing, or what are they not doing in that respect. Economic resource issues, that has to do with a lack of infrastructure, a lack of teaching and learning materials. When we talk about human resource issues, you're looking at the teacher factor in terms of poorly trained teachers, poorly motivated teachers. These are the main fundamental human resources that contribute to a quality of education. Gordon Brown earlier on this morning said that students plus teachers equals hope, and that hope is lacking, and that's a main barrier in terms of the human resource issues. Technical issues. When I talk about when we discover the technical issues, we put the spotlight on Africa in terms of the use of technology, in terms of the use of ICT as a tool to enhance education or increase quality. That's lacking. In terms of social-cultural issues, there are different cultures with different belief systems. The opportunity cost of sending a girl to school versus sending her off to marriage in terms of the dowry she would get. And we had a role model today who decided to go to school and have a bigger dowry in the end. And also the opportunity cost when it comes to sending the males to school compared to taking them onto the farm. So this is the framework that we sort of came up with, and we identified these as the barriers to access and the barriers to quality of education. And to be quite honest, we haven't fully agreed as to whether or not these are the main issues, which is the biggest issue, what to tackle first, but we're still looking into it.
Okay.
I come to realize that the role of teacher in educational system is profoundly important because, for example, there is one research by UNESCO that telling the teacher should have 20% of its time per week to do evaluation of how the teaching and methodology of the study in the class are happening. And this is maybe lacking in my country or in some other countries in developing nation. So this might be something that we have to really think about. Not only assessment between the teachers, but also the leader of the school should also has an important role to inspire the teacher to be more experimental in modernizing the way they teach, and also trying to collaborate with us, collaborate with the student and learners, so that we can also feel engaged in the study. We can also give our inputs on how we can feel convenient with our study process. Okay.
So one of the things that I find interesting is the commodification of education itself. And I think the mass production of materials and shipping them out to the rest of the world is something that can be very dangerous because it creates a sense of alienation between the students and the materials that they're reading. And I think that that's something that we need to look at from the local level. I think education is something that is a local discussion just as much as it is an international discussion. And we need to address a sort of shift in attitude that while we have to meet international standards, we can't disregard the importance of cultural specificity. Why not empower people to create books and write books in their own languages? Or find ways to produce resources in their own countries that are tailor-made for the people that are going to be consuming them.
Here I'd like to ask each of you to kind of role play with me. That I'm the Minister of Education. What one or two things do you think we should prioritize in education in our country?
I will suggest to him that he should provide a new academic plan. This is a new academic plan for unifying system, which is bring all schools together, unifying in one system. They have the same curriculum, the same exams. The schools should focusing about the national identity, providing the educational moral values for each school. Because nowadays we heard about the independent schools, and each school they have their own system, their own curriculum. So I think that's like kind of confusing for education. And so this is my suggestion to him, to make unifying a new education system for the country.
If we're going to strengthen the institutions to start with, starting with Ghana, and use the media to try and get the message across, I think we can reach a wider community. We can definitely solve the problem of the teachers, and this is where Mohammed and I coined the term co-learners. So then we want our teachers to be co-learners because they can learn from us and we can learn from them. And I think that's definitely what I'll tell the Minister of Education.
Okay.
My advice would be to reclaim the production of our education. I think the standardization of learning internationally is something that's great, but I think specificity is important, and that's what I would like to point out to the Minister.
Okay.
Now, my question is addressed in relation to what Al-Jawhara said about creating a culture for education. Now, it's all very well where countries where there is a history or an abundant history of education, such as America or the UK or Paris, France, or countries such as Qatar, which have the vast amount of resources to create a culture, have the ability to do so, and that's very beneficial. But how do you address countries which have neither the history nor the resources to create a culture of education? So how can you create that culture in those countries which actually need the education the most?
I think that we're all sort of waiting for a savior, and I think we all think we're going to come up with the next great solution, and I don't think there's going to be one person or one solution to solve the problems that we're facing. And I think that that's the thing that we need to point out, is that this should be a collaborative effort, and the theme this year is collaborating for change, and I think that that's something that should be happening, and it should be happening across the board, between students and teachers and policymakers. Everyone should be working hand in hand towards this development.